Hello, good evening, and welcome to iNN's Headlines and Beyond for March 28th, 2012. We're going to begin the way we usually begin, starting off with the headlines for domestic policy and domestic affairs for the United States. And not much is actually going on. There's actually very little bit to talk about in terms of domestic affairs. Uh, as I looked around, sort of went into the back pages and the back links, I really didn't find much of anything. It's the same. The Trayvon Martin circus is still going on. Speeches are still being made. Uh, and Anderson Cooper is still looking for Satan in the different photographs and the different bits of evidence, but he really can't find anything. Uh, then what else is there? The primaries really seem to be dead. Not much is being said or written about them. Even if you're looking into the online newspapers like Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post, there's not really much of anything of any substantive anything of any real substance. It seems to be a lot of fluff, and yet these journalists who could be making a significant impact really aren't doing much of anything. They're really sort of giving a lot of credit to this whole idea that a lot of this mainstream media is really a bunch of fluff they're essentially now PR people for one group or another, and it's really difficult to find anything of real substance out there. You really do have to dig around, and that's actually what we do here. Is we dig around, and we find things from all different sides, all different walks. We're not particular, to one group or another. We are individualists. I am an individualist here. I take things from the individual's point of view, and so there's no particular loyalties to one side or another. That being said, as I was digging through things, I was in the Washington Post. I found a backlink to an article about keeping them honest. Every sort of news agency has this whole thing. These fact checkers who supposedly keep people honest, and you really got to take some of the stuff with a grain of salt. You got to really be careful what they're saying. Got to look at some of the statements that they're saying, and then I'll present some of the details for it later on. But one of the quotes, and it came the from a statistic put out by the Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs. It's a government agency that takes care of a lot of government regulations. And they were saying the net benefits of regulations reviewed by them and issued by executive agencies, and this is for Obama here, exceeded $91 billion, 25 times the corresponding, 25 times that of what George W. Bush did, and eight times that of what the Clinton administration did. Then they say in the last 10 fiscal years, since that this rise began in 2007, where higher regulatory costs were imposed, and continued on from there on up. Now, here's where I sort of look at this and see. Now, they say from 2007 on up, you've got a higher regulatory cost, and that Obama has put on is 25 times what George Bush has done, and 8 times of what Bill Clinton. Then you go take a look at the economy when the economy actually collapsed, and you see that the collapse began in 2007, around the issue of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, who are government organizations giving out homes to people who they say need help, but basically they were giving homes to people who couldn't afford them. It was a way of the Democrats who had taken over the House and Senate that was a way of their pushing forward and bringing their regulatory goals into play. And what do we see out of this? We see this is the exact same time period, 2007, 2008, is when the market started to collapse. This is the beginning of the recession here. And so when you start seeing this stuff line up and you start seeing the Obama regulations being 25 times that of George W. Bush and 25 times that of Bill Clinton, and you look at the state of the economy, you can now start drawing a correlation between his domestic affairs policies and the economic effect that's going on with it. So you can say that now, because you've got this correlation, that Obama has had an impact, in this case a negative impact, in the economy. So, and the thing is that here's what I find remarkable, is that none of the Republican candidates, the candidates for the primary, those who want to say they want to be presidents, have really brought any of these things, these issues that I've talked about yesterday and the day before, these issues of substance, the failure of Obama and Obamacare, even though he had billions of dollars in front of him, he had people, he's got a whole team of billionaires on his side. He wasn't able to find the money for this. With a majority of Democrats in House and House and Senate pre 2008, he still wasn't able to get pre 2010. He still wasn't able to get the health care passed. As a matter of fact, they're the ones who bloated this whole thing up to the point where no one knows what's inside of it. So, and yet, what we're not seeing, and it's part of the problem is Romney's problem, is that Romney did the exact same thing with Romney Care, but he doesn't seem to have the ability to back away from his own mistake, saying, hey, I made a mistake, and really move on and really start hammering away at Obama. I don't see anything from Gingrich. I don't see anything from Santorum other than, these bizarre things that they're viewing China. This is both the Democrats and the United States view China as this great menace. What are they talking about? If I were a Republican running, and I want to run against Obama on the economy, because it's the economy, stupid, here's how to do it. Who has the Republican Reagan economy? China and India. What a surprise. Who doesn't have the Reagan economy? Who has the socialist economy? Europe and the United States. Who is doing well economically? China and India. Who's not doing well economically? Europe and the United States. So where do you want to move for economic policy to do well? Like China and India? You want to adopt the policy that they had adopted from us, known as Reaganomics. If they adopt the Reagan policies the way if the way China and India have done now, we would be in the same economic position that China and India are in. This has been shown. There's no mystery here. You don't need to go back to a Harvard graduate economics professor. We see the effect right now. And yet these arguments, for some reason, aren't being made. They're not being brought forward. The people supporting or reporting or doing the research for these candidates haven't done any of this type of work, or I don't see any of this stuff coming up at all. What I see them talking about is, hearing about Romney coming up and saying how Russia is the greatest geopolitical. I mean, he's hitting Obama on fluff. There's no substance behind, So what with what Obama said on the hidden mic, a lot of stuff is said behind the scenes during the negotiations. Flexibility in the second term is always a given for any president because uh, there is no third term for them, so there is no consequence other than assassination to the things that they do. So they have a lot more flexibility, really, unless they really start pissing people off, and again, that leads you towards assassination. Uh, they can more or less do what they want to do in terms of what they want to say and where the policies want to go. The only option is that if you don't have a House and Senate who support the president, and you can get enough of that done like that, you get sort of like a stalemate between the two. Then you basically have a dead, what we call a dead duck president, a president who can't do anything. Again, you're going to have the same partisan stuff that's going on in the current uh, um, the current Congress. Where they can't get anything done because they're partisan. Well, that's what's going to happen. And the thing is unless we start moving these regulatory issues out of the way, and we do need some way of doing this, the United States and Europe is going to stay in the economic mess that it's in. It's as simple as that. That's about it for for domestic affairs. Uh, as I said, I'm really at a loss because there's so much that could be done, that could be said by these candidates, and yet when the opportunity arises, the information isn't there, and the candidates just really is watching this one comedian talk about his kid's baseball team and how back in the 70s you used to try out for a baseball team, and if you didn't make it, you know, they mentioned you struck out and stuff like that. They give you the real terms that that you didn't do so well. Now, as he's describing, when you miss a ball and you're swinging you're swinging wildly at air rather than at the ball, people clap and say, "Great job, you missed the ball." In other words, you're heaping praise on these kids. And there's this view out there now, this sort of nanny state socialist view out there, that for children, and this was a quote that comes from, ironically, a Disney TV show, a Disney Channel TV show, Corey in the House. That's where it comes from. Where he said, and this girl says that children need to be raised with continuous hugs, hugs and kisses, lots of love, and they need to be fertilized with heaps of praise. And what kind of shocked me is that I don't know if people realize with that statement that fertilizer is essentially shit. It's bullshit. That's some of the best fertilizer out there. Anyone who knows about fertilizer and knows about gardening knows that what the best fertilizer is. And if this is what praise is, that you're fluffing these kids up, you're nourishing them, right? With this praise, this shit that you're putting on them, the fertilizer is praise, says a lot for how we're teaching our kids, and as to what the results are going to be much later on, when they get out into the world and realize that not everyone's going to praise them, not everyone's going to love them, not everyone's going to like them, and that more often than not, particularly if you stand up with your own opinions and your own ideas, that people are going to start walking away from you. And that being said, again, back to Anderson Cooper again, and I don't think we will do an hour long today because there really wasn't much in the news. It was kind of slow today. I am doing a lot of digging. I found some interesting stuff, but Anderson Cooper was on again today, banging his war drums, trying to push for a war in Syria, along with his fellow warmonger, Senator John McCain. And the thing is, if you look into Senator John McCain's past, this whole warmongering thing with Joe Lieberman and Senator Lindsey Graham is something recent. This is not in Senator John McCain's past. I really don't know what's gotten into Senator John McCain. Because as they're talking about putting pressure on Syria and Iran, right? I was able to do some digging. I was able to find some really good sources. And here's what I'll give you a statement from the BBC, and this will sort of give you an idea of the evidence that they have against Syria. It says, and this is the quote from the BBC here, but many Arab leaders have chosen not to attend. This is the Arab summit, the Arab League summit in Baghdad. But many Arab leaders have chosen not to attend, a move that will disappoint the Iraqi government, which is hoping to reestablish itself in the Arab fold after years of violence. Our correspondents say. Right, so they're not going about about this and saying, "Oh, the Arab summit is great." Even if you're talking about this Arab summit, the U.S. is playing up as a wonderful summit. That all the Arabs are getting together, they're having a great time, and they're doing all this work. Well, no, because many, if not most, of the Arab leaders haven't shown up. They're not coming. So I wonder who's there. Maybe they're filling the seats with CIA officers. To make it look bigger. And then it continues on. You see later on down. Meanwhile, the violence in Syria, violence has continued in Syria, with the army bombing a town in the province of Hama for the 17th straight day. Activists said, right? Government troops stormed the rebel bastion of Mossadegh. Said the UK Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. Shelling also continued around Homs, the scene of a major offensive by the government forces last month, activists said. Now, they were able to get journalists in there. And so far, all of the information that we've seen from BBC, from that we've seen on CNN's Anderson Cooper, and that Senator John McCain is talking about, look suspiciously like the information that came out in the run-up to the Iraq War, and also about the run-up to what occurred, the overthrow of the government in Libya. Now, if you go on to look into why I say activists and journalists loosely, and why you really can't use these activists and journalists as a reliable source anymore, is you have to really go to an article that I found, and this is looking at what's going on in China surrounding the death of this British supposed businessman who many suspect is actually a British spy. What's his name now here? Neil Hayward. Yeah, that's his name. Neil Hayward. And the thing is, you look at a lot of these the different postings about this, and you look at the different information coming out in these different articles. Again, none of the stuff's coming out in the American media. It's all, I have to go out to foreign media, and I go into and really behind a lot of different other newspapers, and I find some really good sources. Some of it going really back, and you can confirm it in multiple sources, with multiple sources, is where you have that two health reports. One, he died from alcohol poisoning, and they cremated him right away. And another report says he died of a heart attack. Then another report says he died of natural causes. So you've got conflicting reports here. And then when you go and take a look at who was this businessman, and what was he doing in China, you find that he worked for a company named Hackett. Hackett and Company. Well, who was Hackett and Company? So we go do a search on Hackett and Company. You find that they are a major defense contractor with the British MI6. They're basically a military intelligence contractor. And then as you go start digging through this, and you're looking at military contractors, and you're looking at the sources surrounding Hackett and Company, you find an article, and I found this article in a pretty good reputable paper, again from Australia, describing how intelligence agencies since 1990 have farmed out a large chunk of their military intelligence to contractors, and that these contractors in turn will go and contract and cultivate both journalists and activists as agents. I remember, and I was talking to you. I talked to you guys about agents and blind agents. That they're agents and blind assets. That an asset or an agent who is knowledgeable and aware of what's going on can be seemingly something than he is, and he can be an activist, he can be a business person, he can be a journalist, and this is nothing new for intelligence agencies. Intelligence agencies creating front organizations and front businesses is nothing new. This is stuff that's old, so it's not something that's new, and we see this here now playing out in China, and we can go back now to Syria. And now understand that it's been a long-standing practice now since 1990 for military agencies to start now employing journalists and activists as assets, as agents. These people in turn, who are active assets and agents, will in turn recruit other blind assets and agents. Blind assets and agents are people who are doing the work they normally do, but are being steered unknowingly to doing work that's for a military purpose. And in case of particularly for military intelligence. And when I watched Senator McCain come up and talk about how he's heard from his sources that and started pushing for an armed Syrian rebellion, to start arming these people and start really bombing Syria for military intervention in Syria. This is the exact same message that came out from several of my other sources from the rebel groups. This is a direct quote from them that they say the exact same thing. They say the exact same thing that what's his name says, that Senator John McCain says. And when you go to the Israeli sources and into these various different Israeli peace groups, they reveal how Mossad, Bibi and his group, his gang of friends, and AIPAC are all in a push to destabilize Syria. And one of the reasons for destabilizing Syria is that if they can clear the corridor the way they want to, even though they say it's for humanitarian aid, it gives them a shot at Iran. And the thing is, the whole Iranian thing hasn't really stopped. The pushing, the political jostling really is still carrying on, even though we've had the Iranian-Israeli peace groups, we've had sort of a pullback on some of the rhetoric. The covert efforts, the covert operations, hasn't stopped. It's still been pushing on, and we can see this with Senator John McCain, and we can see the push out from Senator John McCain into Anderson Cooper and into the media hype. And this is why when you hear statements and you see this war reporting of what's going on Homs in Syria, you really have to be careful, because we don't know who's telling us this stuff. As I said, we have, meanwhile, and this is the quote from the BBC source, meanwhile, Meanwhile, violence has continued in Syria, with the army bombarding a town in the province of Hama for the 17th straight day, activists said. We have not heard anything from the Pentagon. We have not heard anything from Israeli sources and Israeli military sources of what's going on. We have not heard anything from any of the British sources in terms of the military sources, in terms of what they're capable of producing in terms of spying and their drones and so on and so forth. We haven't heard anything. And yet, they're asking us to believe them unequivocally when they tell us that there's a crisis in Syria and that we need to go in militarily and bomb these people out in order to save them. And we've been through Iraq, we've been through Libya, and Libya, the reports coming up on Libya now, just even today again, but out of the news, another 70 people have been killed today in fighting between rival militias. The weapons, some of the weapons that ended up leaving Libya and went to Mali and supported the coup in Mali. Now you've got fighting with more of the leftover weapons in Libya, and you have another 70 people dead. And as from China, we're now in in terms of geopolitical stability, we are in, under Obama, one of the most unstable periods in history with Obama's foreign policy. So, we really need to be careful with what's going on. I'm still working on the Chinese coup story. There's still a lot more that I've got to reference and I've got to source out. So I will be having that more tomorrow. But watch carefully with the news, that you don't sort of accept what's being said on the news at face value. You've really got to start asking questions. So once again, that's it for tonight. There's not going to be a second half. There's not really much more to say at this point in time on anything else. Stuff is still in the works. And I ask you and recommend that you look at the documentary, the third part of Daniel Yergin's The Prize. It is a very good documentary. Not the whole thing, not the whole story, but a very good documentary and a very good reference to what's going on today. And you can see how Royal Dutch and Exxon, which was American Standard, really are involved in a lot of the politics that are going on. They actually have agents and are involved, just the way you have military intelligence agents. Well, these businesses have their own agents. They have their own saboteurs. They have their own spies, and function much the way a military does. So watch the documentary. This is the third part. It's in the link in the down below bar, and I will see you tomorrow night for the news.